Hi guys and welcome to my review of the Moto G 3rd generation. The Moto G was always known for a phone that delivers a great experience for a really great price. This year though, this price has increased and the competition has grown a lot stronger. So is it still the great budget mid-range offering it was 1 or maybe 2 years ago? I think it's time to find out in my full review, and if you want to skip the in-depth part, no problems, the time codes to the recap or anything else are in the description below, so let's just dive right into it. Okay, let's start off with the design and build quality. Size comparison as always. First here with a 5-incher, as you can see, pretty much the same width, even though it's just a 5-inch device. It's a little bit shorter, but it's a lot thicker. So as you can already see, for a 5-incher, even for a mid-range 5-incher, it's quite hefty and chunky. And what did actually disappoint me a little bit, it is bigger than the 2nd generation Moto G. The bezels are wider on the side, so it is even wider and it's even thicker. This was odd to see. About the curve or the design itself, I am a little bit disappointed in some ways because it doesn't feel so nice in the hand as the 2nd generation did. Because of the slightly odd curves, it kind of always wants to slip out of your hand if you want to grip it, and this is especially noticeable on the buttons. And I won't go into the buttons too much, but they are pretty much the worst buttons that I've ever used, both. First of all, no feedback at all. They feel completely dead. Especially the power button is completely dead, and as you can maybe see here, the button is already on the back of the curve. So whenever you push the button, you actually push the device out of your hand. So it's not as bad as I make you want to believe here, but it did sometimes just happen that you feel like you would press the device out of your hand, which is odd. And with no feedback, no click or no haptic feedback, it is really odd to see. So many times I hit it twice because I thought nothing happened. So definitely also not the best placement, because I always hit the volume up button, because this is where I feel it should be the power button. It is a little bit up. This is something you can get used to, but still, this is one of my main gripes. The second gripe is the actual build quality, because the device itself, even in normal use, maybe not just yet that much here in the video, but it creaks a lot of times. And as you can maybe see here on this side, it is even a little bit loose. So we have a lot of noses that hold the backing that you can remove, where you have the micro SD card and the SIM card tray. But at some point those noses will get loose if you open it too much. And as you can already see here, we have quite some flags. So this should be a waterproof device, or at least in some degree, but I wouldn't count on it because it just doesn't feel really airtight for me, especially here, and it creaks a lot. The plastic here actually is a little bit too hard to provide a real grip, because it's not like it's soft touch, it's just texturized plastic. There is a little bit of grip at some points, but I found it to be more slippery than actually grippy, so not that impressed. The curves as well, it just doesn't lie as comfortable in the hand as the 2nd generation did. Just quick for the ports and so on. Here we have the flash, the dual tone flash, the camera. On the top we have the microphone and the headphone jack. Left side is clean, and on the bottom we have the micro USB port. Here we have the just terrible buttons. So in overall, it still fits nicely in the hand, and it's not like it's built bad, but it's also nothing impressive anymore. And especially for the higher price tag, I would have expected something that feels better than the 2nd generation, but I tried it side by side with the 2nd generation, and I feel the 2nd generation feels better. But let's not waste too much time here on the design and check the display. It's still 720p, and it's still a 5-inch IPS display. I'm still okay with it, but I actually think last year's was a little bit better. It had the better white balance. This one is slightly more warm than it was, because I thought last year's was absolutely perfect in terms of white. Still okay though, sharpness is still fine. Maximum brightness is okay. Sunlight reliability will be a little bit hard. Colors are actually quite nice, still as they were last year. Slightly vibrant, vivid. Not bad, actually accurate and fine, absolutely no problems. The viewing angles aren't the best, but they also didn't disappoint me, so I was fine. But I think what was a really kind of impressive display last year is nothing special anymore these days, because in this price region you already get a lot of 1080p devices, and here it sits a little bit behind, so they definitely dropped the ball a little bit here. The display, don't get me wrong, is totally fine, but just nothing special anymore. So let's check the sound at full volume. So where I maybe wasn't that impressed with the display, I am definitely impressed again with the sound, because very loud, actually quite some nice tonal balance because it's quite a rich sound. Also loud enough, no problems here at all. Really good placement. We have just one, not stereo anymore, but since it is front firing, loud, quite nicely balanced because we have a little bit of bass. Mids are really strong, so voices sound really good, and the highs are clear. So it definitely gets my approval here in terms of sound. No complaints at all. Let's get into the performance here and start with the browser this time. As you will already know, I only unfortunately got the 1 GB version, so multitasking was a little bit more limited than I guess the 2 GB version would be, but otherwise the performance is really nice, and this is definitely a big step up to last year's, even though it has just a 410 compared to the 400 that last year's model got. And we only still have here 1 GB of RAM. But I would say this is definitely the best performing 1 GB RAM Android device I've seen so far. Because as you can see here, everything is super smooth, super responsive. As you can see here, all my gestures worked quite nice. No problems here at all. Palabra as well, just to see a RSS reader. Also really nice in terms of performance. Loading times are a little bit slower than maybe on a high-end device. And it sometimes has to load some things. But absolutely fine, no complaints. Let's check Google Plus. Even that one worked out quite well. Let's wait for it to load. As you can see here, that's absolutely fine. So in terms of performance, it's really good. And I said it already a few times, I really love the performance of the 410. Let's check the multitasking. As you can see here, actually not that bad. It will have to reload quite often, but it's done quite subtle, so I don't really mind it that much. So sorry, but I have to say performance absolutely nice for a device. But you also have to consider this device is already a little bit more expensive than last year's model, and maybe it's not that something special anymore, because you get the devices for less money than you do here and get the same performance, because we have now competitors like the OnePlus X that costs pretty much the same but offers a way better performance with the Snapdragon 410. This is something like, I would say, a really good performing mainstream device, because not so many people know about the OnePlus X, but everyone knows the Moto G. And as you can see here, the gaming performance absolutely fine. Actually really nice. I didn't expect it to be that well. Almost no lags, almost no frame drops. So I don't want to drag it too far, because all I can say is the performance is absolutely fine within games, within apps, multitasking as well. With the 2 GB version, it should be even better. In terms of the battery life, I will just post the charging time because I just don't have it on hand here. It was something slightly over 3 hours, I think, which is a little bit long considering the battery isn't even that big. Okay, so let's get into the battery life. The first day that I had was quite a disappointing one, because slightly over 1 day with 3.5 hours, I didn't know why it was that bad, but then it got way better. As you can see here, almost 3 hours with just 50%. Then almost 6 hours over a day. This was on Wi-Fi though. 5.5 over 1.5 days, also on Wi-Fi. Once I got on a mixed use with mobile data, you can see 4.5 hours over the day and close to 5 hours. So there is quite a noticeable difference between going Wi-Fi only and the mixed use with mobile data. I would expect at least 6 hours or close to 6 hours on Wi-Fi only use over the course of 1 day. And with mobile use or mixed use, you can still get sorry, about 5 hours with no problem. I was already at a brightness of, let's check it, 40%, and this was quite enough bright for me, so no complaints here at all. Software, there's not really much to talk about. It is pretty much stock Android 5.1.1 with a few little additions, and I think you pretty much know all about them. We have the glance feature, so if you pick it up, the display will turn on, give you your notifications. You have Moto voice and so on. Not the waking up from the device when it's turned off, but it does all it does. It has to do. The software is clean, minimalistic, not too bloated, actually quite nice. So in terms of software, I'm totally fine. I would have a little bit of a desire for a few more enhancements, maybe for additions like maybe changing some other things, but it is totally fine. It gets the job done. In terms of the camera, I have to say I'm not that impressed as I thought it would be, because I heard it has the Nexus 6 camera module, but actually I gotta say pictures turned out quite nice outside. They were sharp, the focus was working quite okay, saturation was nice, exposure was nice. Once you go into low light, the quality was completely bad, completely diminished. Very, very blurry, very, very pixelated, very grainy, not really anything good to talk about. So I guess the low light capabilities are impressive. The video quality were a little bit off as well, because the video itself looked very, very smooth and very nice, but also very oversaturated, and the exposure levels were quite harsh, so it did drastically change the brightness within the video. Other than that, it was quite nice. The focus worked okay, sometimes it had a little bit of trouble, but other than that, the camera is fine. So I think it's time for the recap now. Okay, I think it's time for the recap, and if you skipped the in-depth part or maybe want to refresh your memory, here's everything once again real quick. Design and build quality actually a little bit disappointing, because I would have wished for something more substantial, more solid and more premium compared to last year. And with the increased price, I would have wished for something better, not for something of the same or even slightly worse. Same goes for the display. While it was a really great display in 2014, it's not much more than a solid good display in 2015. So, like the competition, maybe they should have stepped up their game and already offered 1080p, but that's up for a discussion in another time. Performance, still absolutely fine. The Snapdragon 410 delivered a really nice experience, very smooth, quite fast, and even capable with just 1GB of RAM in terms of multitasking. 2GB should even improve this gaming performance well, so no real complaints here, and I don't think they should have gone for something higher end, because something like the 615 would have been a lot more expensive and wouldn't really work out that much better anyways. In terms of battery, they did a great job, because you get a really nice 1 or 2 day use device out of it, because 5 or 6 hours of screen on time should be no problem, and maybe even more, depends of course on your use. Software, really nice, stock Android with a few enhancements. Personally, I would have wished for a few more, but if you want a stock Android or maybe Nexus experience, this is definitely the one to go for. You also have root support, and the XDA support in terms of custom ROMs is also there, so quite a good job. The last thing to talk about would be the camera. It was a little bit disappointing from what I heard on other reviews, but for this price range, it's absolutely okay. I would say it's fine. In low light, it definitely was a little bit disappointing, but once you are outdoors and have good light, the camera was able to produce really nice shots. Video wasn't that great, but still overall quite good. So what's the point of this review now? What's my take on it? I personally have to say, my main issue here is the increased price of here 230 euros and 280 euros. In maybe the US or somewhere else, it's priced more competitive and then the value is better. But here, with something like a OnePlus X coming out quite soon, or maybe some other different phones like the Alcatel Idol Touch 3, there are just better offerings in terms of value. Don't get me wrong, it's a really, really solid device with overall really good qualities, but I think it's priced maybe too high for like maybe $50. If the price would be closer to 200, this would be definitely a great deal, because of all those budget mid-ranges we had last year, this would be the best phone. But the competition has just grown so strong that I don't see it as much as the budget king anymore. It's a really good budget prince maybe, and I don't really know so much which device right now would be better, because that's always a thing of personal preference and you have to decide it for yourself. It's really good, but a little bit too expensive for what they offer. For this price of 280, I would have maybe already expected a 1080p display and definitely a better build quality, because I'm just not so happy in terms of feel in hand and build quality and the design overall. So that's my take on it. Like I said, a really great offering, but just not the Moto G it was back in 2014 or 2013. So that's my take on it. That's my review of the Moto G 3rd generation. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the description below. If you like this review, give it a thumbs up, reshare it, subscribe to my channel. Otherwise, I wish you a nice day. Okay, until next time, bye.